Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How are you? It is Friday. We made it to another Friday. Are we in week 4 or week 5 of The Apprentice? I can't remember anymore. We might as well just measure time this way. We're trying to get through it a week at a time. Friday, February 17th, 2017. There's 2 17s in there, so any of you who I guess are lottery players, I don't know, you're stuck. What are you going to do? Just play a 17 and then you got to come up with the other 5 numbers yourself? Can't help you. All right. What's going on today? Well, my oh my, there's just so much. I guess we're going to have to start by acknowledging the existence of yesterday's presidential press the president was at a press conference. Well, the president was there, and the press was there, and words were exchanged. But I don't know if you could call it. Certainly wasn't presidential. Was it a press conference? I don't know. It was crazy. Did you see it? It was so bad. I usually, watch these things via Twitter, and it was obviously so bad that I felt like I could no longer trust what was being said on Twitter. Are you exaggerating? I have to turn this on and see it for myself. I saw the second half of the thing. It went on forever. It was an hour and 17 minutes, I think, officially speaking. And when I say officially, I mean that's what Mark Knoller said. That's official enough, right? He times all these things and loves to measure things down to the minute and whatever other unit he's working in. So clearly one of the craziest things most people have ever seen a president deliver. Really we should just dissect the thing, and that would probably do like 2, 3, 4 shows worth of stuff. Thing that jumped out at me most, I guess, the part I saw, would have to be that. I mean, the rest of it I saw people talk about. There were some remarkable things before I even turned the thing on, but I think the most remarkable part of it was the exchange he had with the Orthodox Jewish correspondent for I don't know who, but after taking a couple of questions, Trump says, I want to have an easy question. I want a friendly reporter, which is half joking, half true. 3/4 true, 1/4 joking. It's not very funny, really, actually. But he was looking around for a friendly reporter that would ask him an easy question, and I don't know why he decided to call on this guy, but he did. I thought, I don't know, maybe he figured it was going to be like, do you love Israel or something? Because, Jews, they all... that was a pretty clear theme, by the way, throughout the appearance that he put in. Lots of weird undercurrents of prejudice coming to the surface. But he asked this guy, the reporter essentially said, I'll ask you an easy question, and basically asked them, what about all this anti-Semitism that's going on, all these incidents of anti-Semitism? There's been all these bomb threats at Jewish community centers around the country. What are you going to do about it? And Trump goes bananas. I mean, he was already bananas, so he continued in banana land for a little bit, and he got mad. He actually got mad at that question. And the upshot of it, really, it boils down to this. He said, you said you were going to ask me an easy question. That's not an easy question. Therefore, you're a liar. Sit down, shut up, and let me tell you something. I'm the least racist person there is. I'm the least anti-Semitic person in the planet. There's, whatever. And then he just dropped the question, essentially. He just said, you're a liar. You said you were going to ask an easy question. I'm dumb, so that question isn't easy for me, so that makes you a liar. That was it. That was the exchange. That was really one of the more amazing things I've ever seen. Plus, of course, naturally, he used the appearance to plug his bigly electoral victory, which he was corrected on. I think he not only was he corrected on the total, but they pointed out not even really that big of a victory when you really consider it in historical context. But then the rest of it was ranting and raving how the press sucks And I like the inoculation he tried to give himself. Not only does the press suck, not only are you terrible, not only am I ranting and raving at you because of how terrible you are, but tomorrow you're all going to write, oh, Donald Trump ranted and raved. I'm not ranting and raving. I'm not ranting and raving. I'm having a great time up here. This is wonderful. I'm having fun. This is fantastic. This is not ranting and raving. It's not. It's not. You say it is, but it isn't. It's not. It's not. Okay? You're going to say yes, and the answer is no. Okay. The end. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're so dishonest. That was the upshot of the whole thing. I think I really just pretty much encapsulated the entirety of it. There were specifics, of course, and we could delve into them. But what's the problem? Anyway, well, the problem is we obviously have a president who's insane and incompetent to the task. But why listen to me tell you that when you could listen to me tell you that other people have said it? How about that? We have that for you today. Let's go back into it. And by the way, okay, so today is Friday, so we are without Greg Dworkin. I know, the new schedule is killing us all. Doors open for those of you who would like to participate, of course. Armando, if you have anything to say, and how could you possibly really have anything to say at this point? As for the rest of you, honestly, send us your thoughts about what you might like to hear discussed. One of these days I should just open the phone lines to our regular contributors and let you in on the super secret Skype line at some point and just say, oh, why don't you come in here and you think it's so easy? You do the damn radio show. It's not, but it's fun and you'll enjoy it, and then you'll ask to come back, and then I'll be giving up the airwaves to you again like I did the other day, surrendering for the whole second hour, which is not bad for me. I don't know how you'll feel about it if you're interested in just being entertained for a while. Anyway, look, Pocket. It's full of stuff, okay? This is not fake news. It's real, okay? It's just there. There's the Pocket. I'm going to open it. We're going to read what's in it. That's just the way it is. I tell it like it is. What do we want to tell you about? Okay. Yesterday, I had put aside, and I think this was the link that didn't work from the Washington Post. I think I hit Pocket too fast. It was such a headline it was. I hit Pocket. Just put little echoes on myself there. It was such a great headline that I think I hit Save to Pocket before it finished loading. I knew what the headline was. So it seems like a major oversight to have finished the show yesterday without at least noting. And I guess I thought Greg would do this. Greg, these are your words. It's your fault that you didn't bring me the words that I thought you were going to bring me. Admit it. Trump is unfit to serve. It's E.J. Dionne writing in the Washington Post. How could we not have mentioned it? And the answer is, that's how crazy this administration is. That administration. The guy at the head of the administration, the president, he's a nut bar, and we got distracted by how crazy ass he really was. Let's take a look at this. Armando says he does have some reactions to, what? To Trump. Who? Really? I'm interested. I'm always interested, especially when I'm facing 2 hours of empty airtime. But, we're going to start with this one, because this should have been discussed yesterday, and you can feel free to chime in on it, either on the air or otherwise. Admit it, Trump is unfit to serve. I admit it, you're not going to get an argument from me, EJ. So stop being so argumentative. These are your words. Let's not mumble or whisper about the central issue facing our country. What is this democratic nation to do when the man serving as president of the United States plainly has no business being president of the United States? The Michael Flynn fiasco was the entirely predictable product of the indiscipline, deceit, incompetence, and moral indifference that characterized Donald Trump's approach to leadership. Even worse, Trump's loyalties are now in doubt. Questions about his relationship with Vladimir Putin and Russia will not go away, even if congressional Republicans try to slow walk a transparent investigation into what ties Trump has with Putin's Russia. I don't have any ties, okay? No ties. People have asked me, there's no ties there. I keep saying. You keep asking me, I keep saying, there's no ties. I don't have anything. Nothing is there. There's no business. There's no deals. There's no nothing. There's just the deals and businesses. Okay? Okay? Are we clear? Thank you. Even worse, Trump's loyalty is now in doubt, right? And we have to figure out what ties has Trump got with Putin's Russia, and who on his campaign did what and when with Russian intelligence officials and diplomats and others who may or may not have damaged property, let's say, in the Ritz-Carlton. Party leaders should listen to those Republicans who are already pondering how history will judge their actions. They will condemn you and send you to hell, by the way, in case you were wondering. How history will judge their actions in this wrenching moment, and really wretched moment is even better. Senators such as John McCain, duh, and Lindsey Graham, I say duh to both of you as a matter of fact. These guys are ridiculous. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. They're approaching Susan Collins levels of deep concern about everything and zero votes about anything. McCain eventually, I think, voted against whoever was up yesterday. Mulvaney. Big deal. Who cares? Anyway, people are enjoying the Trump impression. You know what? I wasn't even really trying to do the voice, but I think it's the ranting and the raving and the okays and the tone of voice more than the sound of his voice. But Ricky gives it the thumbs up. But I'm also joined here by Matthew Edmond, who, by the way, I like to give out people's Twitter handles. I think you should all follow each other, quite frankly. Then you can have the conversation that we need to have. This is what makes this radio show unique. One, we can respond to you on the air about these things. And two, you can talk amongst yourselves, right? Matthew Edmond tweets as PZLMA. I'm guessing that's an L and not an uppercase I in the middle of there, right? PZLMA. Well, how would we say that? You could tell us. And that way we can refer to you off the air that way. But your Trump impression is one of the better ones I've heard. Nice. Yeah, thanks very much. It's the outrage. Thank you. That does it. Anyway, John McCain and Lindsey Graham suck. But they seem to know it's only a matter of time before the GOP will have to confront Trump's unfitness. They also sense that Flynn's resignation as a national security advisor, the national security advisor, for lying about the nature of his contacts with Russia's ambassadors to the, I'm pluralizing lots of things, ambassador to the United States, raises fundamental concerns about Trump himself. Yes, it does. The immediate political controversy is over how Congress should investigate this. Republican leaders say attention from Congress's intelligence committees is sufficient, and for now Democrats have agreed to this path. But many in their ranks, along with some Republicans, argue it would be better to form a bipartisan select committee that could cross jurisdictional lines and be far more open about its work. Probably not a bad idea. Those pushing for the select committee have reason to fear that keeping things under wraps in the intelligence panels could be a way to bury the story for a while and buy Trump time, letting Americans in on what went on here, and quickly, is the only way to bolster trust in this administration, if that is even possible. And let's face the reality here. It could also hasten the end of a presidency that could do immense damage to the United States. I just want to pause here. As I'm reading this, remember this came out, yesterday morning? Was it the night before? What's today? Today's the 17th. Yesterday was the 16th. So this was posted February 15th at 7:30. We really basically, Washington, D.C. woke up to it on the morning of the 16th. And then woke up to the news that the president decided to have a press conference. One report I saw, which was an unverified comment of somebody's on Twitter, but which has the ring of truth to it, and you can never really tell for sure. I'm sure it's not sort of thing that ordinarily you just go out of your way and make up, although these days, who knows? I think it was there was some indication it had been read and reported somewhere, but basically there wasn't any press conference scheduled. It was just Trump woke up and said, feeling like doing a press conference. And I have a feeling that he may have, I don't know whether he read this, but certainly this opinion piece from E.J. Dionne reflects a zeitgeist, if that's the right word for it. Everybody's thinking this. And so E.J. Dionne says what everybody's thinking, but is afraid to say, except we're not really afraid to say it. Anyway, so I think he might have been motivated by these questions and say, I'm going to go out and take command. I'm going to answer questions about Flynn. I'll use the excuse of making the announcement about the new labor secretary, which was a joke because he came out, basically said, okay, this is the name of my new labor secretary. Now, you all suck, and here's an hour's worth of why you... He barely mentioned the guy. And he spoke more about the fact that his last name was Acosta, and so is Jim Acosta's from CNN, than about who is this labor secretary. But anyway, it's pretty nutty. Armando, can't wait, and I don't blame you.
I also have to go early today.
You got to run. Okay.
I'm tied up in the second hour, so I told you I wanted to do a reaction to Trump. It's more a reaction to the reactions to Trump.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, you could go through the craziness of yesterday. It was 77 minutes of nuts, but we've had 77 minutes of nuts multiple times from Trump.
Yeah.
One that always comes to mind for me personally is the crazy speech in Phoenix. Crazy is a nice word for it. After he went to Mexico, it was the most racist speech I think ever delivered by a major party candidate in modern history. So, what does it mean? The reaction, to put it in terms of, the gasping from the crowd, and it was pretty universal. I mean, I watched TV this morning for the first time in a while, and, Joe Scarborough was calling everybody a liar every other sentence. I mean, when I say everybody in the Trump administration. Mika called him a fake president.
That's not a bad one. There you go. I mean, he hit on the fake news thing all day yesterday too. He just kept saying it, and then he said his version of a joke. In fact, I'm going to stop using fake news. I'm going to say very fake news.
Very fake.
Wow,
news.
that's
I mean, and then of course the funniest part, that there is one specific reaction. The funniest part, of course, is the leaks are fake news and they're criminal at the same time.
Yes.
That's obviously nuts. But the funniest was he was railing about fake news, and he made up his whole fake I had the most electoral votes since Reagan.
Yes, right.
So he got called out right in the spot.
Yeah, and he got his own total wrong. I think he
he had 304 actually, not 306. Though he earned 306.
Yes. I don't blame him too much for that. Although, it's your votes. You tell me how many you got.
Yeah,
he did answer that too. He was like, "Well, that was the number I was told," which
I was told
tells us a lot.
Well, that obviously was told. I mean, we all know he closely followed the 2012 election. In fact, he called for a revolution after the results came in.
Yeah,
and I'm not joking. He called for a revolution.
Yeah, I know, but I wasn't paying attention to anything. I like revolution. That's what he'll say. But okay.
Yeah, I mean, he knew that Obama won. Obama won with 332.
I'm sure
actually, it was 333 electoral votes, I believe, because he got one of those districts.
You know him. He's not going to read any further down than top lines of polls. And what's the number, the percentage?
Listen, he didn't have to look back very far. It was just the one election previous to his.
Listen, I don't look. I have people who look. Okay.
Okay. But of course, he actually only, as everybody now knows, of course, he only beat George W. Bush in the electoral vote count in recent history. Every other president between Trump and Reagan beat him, except for George W. Bush.
Okay.
So much for that talking point. But the reaction is interesting. I was going back to the point of how this reaction plays. It felt sort of grab your pussy-ish. The aftermath of that today, a little bit.
How do you mean?
In the sense that people thought, wow, this is seriously bad.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to, wow, this is bad, but, he's Trump and literally, not seriously, and all that other nonsense they used to do. There wasn't much pulling back on how bad it was.
No.
I don't watch Fox, so I don't, I'm sure Fox went the other way.
Yes, and you should be aware, if you're not, because we do live in a small bubble here, but Trump fans, to no one's surprise, except sometimes you need to hear it said, they thought it was fantastic. Of course, not only they enjoy it, but there's literally, some large percentage of the country who's out there is like, boy, did he slay him yesterday. A press conference unlike any other. That was literally the best press conference ever held.
Yeah, I think I mean, look, there's always going to be that.
But
that's clearly, and it actually, you give me a nice segue to what I found to be kind of a ridiculous tweet that people are thinking, wow, this is profound, including Nate Silver, who whenever he strays from the data, in my view, just is not very good. Here's the tweets from David Byler from Real Clear Politics, the conservative political site.
Okay.
And he said, this is his tweet, quote, something Trump says can be, one, troubling, two, liked by 30 to 45%. That's a nice little range there, right? 30 to 45% of the United States. Three, disliked by majority of voters. Four, forgotten in days, all at the same time. Yeah, I mean, frankly, that's true for everything that ever happens in the world. I mean, things get forgotten because something new happens. I mean, Trump isn't unique in this, right?
No.
Right. But here's the context that I think always is missing from this discussion. Trump lost the popular vote, and not by a little bit, by 3 million votes. He got 46% of the vote. Hillary Clinton got 48.1 or 48.2, whatever the final number was. He was rejected by a majority of the country. We have this anachronistic, undemocratic, ridiculous system called the Electoral College that handed the less popular candidate the presidency. Listen, it's the system we have. What are you going to do for now? But when you talk about whether he's popular or he's not popular or it sells with America, he never sold with America in a majority way. So that's going to start with that context. And then, of course, since he became president, I think a lot of people, context again on approval ratings for presidents who just inaugurated. There is a honeymoon. Till now, there was a honeymoon for every president, including, just to put things in perspective, George W. Bush. Yeah. After 2000, and what was the most contentious presidential election result ever. I mean, it wasn't decided until a month after. And even he, at this stage, had about a 53 or 54% approval rating and only about a 20% disapproval. Pew, the very day of Trump's press conference yesterday, Pew released their poll, and it had Trump at 39% approval, 56% disapproval. These are, unprecedented, historically bad approval numbers for a president in his first month in office. Never seen it in modern history. So the reality is, when you say, all the same time, it's going to be forgotten. The thing is, every day it's something new that's troubling, only liked by a third of the country, disliked by a majority of voters, and forgotten in days, if you want to put it that way. But there's something new that does that every day. And it's sticking. The disapprovals are sticking. And it's not mild. This strong disapproval number is near 50%. Strong disapproval, as you know, is the number that people think won't ever move. There's no way of changing that for the most part. So, he is what he is. Can he go lower? Of course he can go lower. I just think that what he's doing is making sure he can't go any higher, even in the face of, say, serendipity, and he has a tremendous economic performance for 4 years. So I think that's just not sound analysis by David Byler and Nate Silver, who seconds it, because I think it just misses the point. When you start low, there's less distance to travel to go lower. I mean, that's true. There's less room for descent, but look, if the election were held today, he'd lose, no matter who was on the other side, because people are basically have buyer's remorse right now. Maybe he'll turn it around. Maybe he'll get lucky and things will just work out for him, with a rabbit's foot, or maybe he'll stumble into good policy accidentally. But right now, he's not where he needs to be, and the Republicans aren't where they need to be. And there's one thing that happened last night that you might have mentioned. It's Daily Co-centric. David Neer was on Rachel Maddow last night discussing the special election in Georgia 6. Daily Coast has a candidate, John Ossoff. And when I say Daley Kos as a candidate that we've endorsed, he's not, we didn't buy in.
I made him in a lab.
But they are raising immense amounts of money, relatively speaking, for him. And everybody's behind him. John Lewis is behind him. A couple of other big-name Georgians, Democrats, are behind him. I don't know all the ins and outs of that special election. But it's Tom Price's seat, who's, Tom Price now head of HHS.
Yeah.
And it was only a Trump won by only 1 or 2 points, I think. So it's a competitive district, or at least we hope it is. We're certainly banking on it being a competitive district. And the other thing that I think people are missing about the significance of the race is that a good Democratic result, let's say an upset win, is a real message to the Republican Party that they are really going to have to decide what they're going to do with Trump. And because right now, they're sitting tight. They may be whispering, this is crazy, to reporters, whispering in their ear without attribution because they don't want Trump coming after them. But if you show some tangible results, that would be a huge tangible result. You might find that Trump can be stymied in terms of policy sooner rather than later. So I hadn't thought about it that way, but it seems to me this Georgia special election is actually not just a marker for 2018. It could have tangible impact immediately in terms of how Republicans deal with Trump.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? It's so hard to tell what kind of impact a real thing is going to have on Donald Trump.
Well, I always think elections are the most real thing for politicians.
But he's not a politician. Yeah.
Well, he is, obviously, whatever he is, but the rest of them are politicians. And losing that seat, if we can pull it off, and it's a tough road, let's not kid ourselves.
It's not easy to do that.
But if it's doable and, knock on wood, it happens, it's not only just one more seat in the House, which will be important to trying to regain the majority in 2018. It's going to be, I think, a tangible impact on how Republicans deal with Trump. Let me go back to my old analogy about the grab by the, what moment in the election last year. Remember Jason Chaffetz came out that night and said he couldn't endorse them, he couldn't look his daughter in the eye, yada, yada.
I remember him saying that. I don't remember when, but he said it.
He said it the night that the tape came out.
Oh, well, okay. Clearly an emotional reaction.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he stuck to it for about 3 days.
All right.
And then, he sort of slid back, and apparently he's not looking his daughter in the eye anymore. But, but Chaffetz is, being what he's being now, a doormat, after talking about this, that, and the other. And maybe he sees that, particularly in Utah, where Trump was much less effective than in other red states, that he really can't play this game he's playing with Trump. And he'll, maybe have to make some bona fides by doing actual oversight. Listen, I don't expect all that, but I just think it's an intriguing possibility if you can show some tangible electoral results that show how damaging Trump can be.
Well, yeah. There's not a lot of opportunity to do that. Special elections are weird, so it's tough to tell how this one goes. They're also generally low turnout events, which are not wouldn't bode particularly well in a Republican district previously held by a Republican, now in the administration, won, if narrowly, by Trump. That is a long slog.
It is, but there's certain aspects of it that make it not unfavorable. First of all, I think Democratic energy is incredibly high right now. So a special election now is not, it's not a sleeper in July. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's possible. Plus, the other part of the equation is the Trump cult is, I think, one of the things that we've always talked about, and people aren't, in my opinion, dealing with, is that Trump won a lot of these votes by being, well, I call it a race appeal, and I'll stand by that. And it's, to me, an aspect of it that could be more favorable than you think, in that voter is going to come out for Trump. Is he going to come out for a run-of-the-mill whoever? There's another election that I think that could be like that. Your election for governor in Virginia. It's this year, I believe.
Yeah.
And there was an early polling from Quinnipiac that maybe Greg discussed yesterday, but the Democrats have a fairly comfortable lead over the likely Republican challenges. The Republican race, I think, becomes interesting in that Ed Gillespie, who you, of course, know who he is, but for those who don't, is a longtime Republican insider. I mean, total creature of the Beltway. Was the RNC chair, I believe, and basically has been one of these, Republican lobbyist types forever, right?
Uh-huh.
And he's the leading candidate. McAuliffe beat him in the last election, and he's back for another shot. But he's not a Trump type, or wasn't, in my view. So is he going to be, is Gillespie going to even get the Trumpsters in Virginia to really come out the way they did for Trump?
Difficult to say. I mean, Trump can turn that on, of course, and come out and say, and you absolutely have to come out.
Can he?
Well, he can do it. He can say it. The question is, how enthusiastic will people be? It'll work for some portion of them. Some people that, I guess the people who could say things like, for instance, if Donald Trump went to McDonald's and they forgot to put fries with his order and he complained about it, the people who would say, boycott McDonald's, those guys will be there. But it's entirely possible that he says, and who's a really great guy? Ed Gillespie, because blah, 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 because I have to say that because I'm the president now. And, but a pretty good portion of people will recognize right away, he's just saying that. He isn't interesting. He's quite boring and quite a Beltway insider at that. And I'm thinking back. I think he actually did spend some time either on Gingrich's staff or whatever. So I suppose that they could get Gingrich involved in the race and people would, for a certain segment of the population. But where it would really count, where I think Trump has the real cultish pull, is the part of the state that I don't think Gillespie has any real roots in, the Southwest.
Right.
It's just not going to work very well. He's aged considerably, Gillespie, by the way. I remember him as a young man, and I think because I remember him from his, he was in Dick Armey's staff back in the day.
Was he? I didn't know that. I just remember him, being really oily on TV.
He was a Contract with America dude.
Yeah, he always seemed oily to me. I don't know if he's changed. If it was, I can't remember if he actually had oily hair, but I always, pictured him as having oily hair.
He is a little unkempt in that way.
No, the whole slick grease back, and he just didn't convey that whole "Make America Great" vibe, in my view. And he's not a good old boy in the Haley Barbour sense. No. So it's kind of a weird fit for the
he lives
Trump
in Virginia by virtue of having moved to Washington, D.C. to work in federal level politics. He's from New Jersey.
Oh, is he? I didn't even know where he was from.
Mount Holly.
So he's a carpetbagger.
Yeah, all of us me too. I'm here 20-something years, but I'm not running for office. That's true. And also, it's a beautiful bag. My daughter makes them. You should all go buy them. So he's not a Virginian per se, but he's been here long enough. But basically, having been a creature of the Beltway and the Beltway carving out a small sector of Virginia, okay, I'm Virginian. And, okay, whatever. He hasn't got any particular roots here. Although he has run in the past, and so that means he's toured the state before.
Yeah, he's been to all counties of the state. What is this? Isn't that the...
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that's a Virginia thing. I think that's an Iowa thing.
Yeah, I guess everybody... Yeah, well, right. We know about it because of the Iowa caucuses thing, but I imagine in most states you say, yeah, if you're campaigning for governor, you probably try to make it to all the counties or nearby, right? I want to maximize the number of places where 4 counties meet. Get me a rally there at the corner of these 4. So, I don't know. He's not much for... He's not thoroughly Virginian or anything, but I mean, he's...
Look, here's the... I mean, I was looking him up.
For sure.
Here he is. Ed Gillespie, born August 1st, 1961, an American Republican political strategist who served as the 61st chairman of the Republican National Committee and counselor to the president in the George W. Bush administration. Gillespie, I love this part. Gillespie, along with Democrat Jack Quinn, founded Quinn, Gillespie and Associates, a bipartisan lobbying firm.
Yes. That's, that's not going to go over all that well with people, although, they'll do their best to just, you see, he works with both sides of the aisle. Well, he takes money from
what I'm
both
saying
sides.
is he's not, he's not an outsider.
No.
He's none of those things, right?
No, you know what? I said he came to D.C. to work in politics. He probably did, but he went to Catholic University. So he came down here, went to Catholic University, got himself an internship on Capitol Hill, and then stayed. His political career, in case you're interested in all this, he worked raised in a Democratic family, began as an intern for Andy Ireland, Democrat from Florida, in 1984. Then he worked as a RNC telephone solicitor in 1985. Went on to finally make it to top aide to Dick Armey when he was House Majority Leader. So, principal drafter of the Contract with America. Then he goes on. So it works for. He's a press secretary for K6 presidential campaign in 2000. George W. Bush he spends some time with. Strategist for Elizabeth Dole. What else have we got here? Bush reelect. Wrote a book. Chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia. Later, I think he ends up as RNC chair, as you mentioned. But yeah. He moved after he stayed after college, and just worked the Hill, and then ran a lobbying firm, and now he's like, I'm a Trump American. See if it works.
I just think it's an interesting pitch. The race I was talking about, the Georgia's 06 special election,
instead, yes.
It's March 21st, which is a little more than a month from now. They expect a runoff because it's one of those multi-candidate fields, which would be the following month, April. It's a question of where you think the energy will be in April of 2017. So far, I'd say that the expectation should be that we should have a good performance. Winning a red seat is hard.
Yes.
But this is not a bad opportunity. And as I said, I think it really could have some impact on the rest. And, of course, the other 2017 races will as well. Now, New Jersey's up as well, right? It's this year.
Yeah, they're an off-year election, too, yes.
Right. And New Jersey, I don't know what Republican they're running, but given Christie's crater, it's going to be hard for the Republicans to hold the governorship. But we'll see. So I think there's important special elections this year. I don't know all of the others, but that's one. One of the things that I want that's different today is this discussion of Pruitt, which I think you were talking about before.
Oh yes,
the procedure. I think the clock runs out at 2 today. Is that right?
I think 1:00 is what they set it for. a couple hours earlier than it would have otherwise run out. They did it by means of unanimous consent agreement, the agreement being to treat the cloture vote taken yesterday at, I don't know, early in the morning, mid-morning, I think, to treat it as though it had been held at 7 a.m. for the purposes of running the 30-hour clock out at an earlier time of day, 1 p.m., so that they could take off for a recess early. Otherwise, it would have been something like 9 o'clock at night, I think.
Okay, and what was the? Why would Democrats do that?
So they could leave early.
Well, that's not the best.
It's not
argument.
the best. It's not the best idea. But well, I mean, at the time, I don't think they had any real serious reason to believe that this court order was going to come through and they were going to get a chance to review things. Plus, they had, he was on the schedule. They know how these things go. You can plot out to the hour when the vote's going to take place, inevitably, because there's no power to stop it. So the question at the time was, do you want to sit around until 9 o'clock and vote inevitably to confirm his nomination by a vote of 52 to 48 at 9 o'clock on Friday, or wouldn't you rather, heading into recess, just get it over with at 1 p.m. and be able to make your afternoon flight? And, okay, no other nominations. We're not starting the clock on anybody else. There won't be any work done next week. They were not going to approve the cabinet at any increased pace versus what it would have been, so fine. But
all
now,
right.
Finding out that you have the chance to review his emails, they say, all the time that we could have spent, I guess, yelling about his emails and then losing the vote between 1 p.m. and 9 p.m. is lost. Is that worthwhile? Probably. I mean, so they can spend the morning reading the emails onto the record, I guess, if they get them. Although who knows when they're going to be delivered.
Well, the order can't be delivered today. I mean, the court doesn't have Congress as a party before it. It had some individual who sued under some type of FOIA law that Oklahoma apparently had. How they got into federal court, I'd like to know. I'm kind of curious how they got to federal court. But be that as it may, the problem with the logic you just described, and I understand it on the micro, obviously, well, look, we did what we could do. 2 o'clock is no different than 9 o'clock. And we can all make our planes and get back home. It's kind of weak because you know what? There's a lot of things that are convenient in life now. We're here telling everybody to resist in every way possible. I mean, people are citizens. Go protest this. Go fight that. Call him. But you know what? None of that stuff's convenient.
True.
So I kind of think the mindset was bad, to be honest with you. But I wouldn't be too critical about it. But I think a little attitude adjustment and understanding the optics of that. Listen, you're asking people whose life isn't politics to do a lot of things that are inconvenient. Your life is politics.
That's
So
true.
you could take a later plane to get home.
Yeah.
So I think, frankly, the it's not something they should be doing anymore. Let's not kill them too hard now, but it just doesn't work.
I think you've got it.
If you're going to argue this is an emergency situation and all hands on deck and call everybody and march everywhere, you can, and they say, but I get to leave early because I want to get home.
Right. But I want to get home to you to join you at your rallies. Well, you'll see.
Well, you know what? If they had something organized like that might be a way to sell it. But
yeah. I mean, it may be the case for some of them, but it's, generally speaking, probably not the case. And, it's something that I think you've hit the right note on it. It's something that they ought to think about and say, at the time it seemed like it wasn't that bad because it was, it still is an inevitability. And we're not going to get those emails even if we waited until 9 o'clock. But, I guess we should start thinking. They're very clearly thinking about, all right, don't let anything major go by. Don't let them leap ahead. If it's a matter of hours here or there, it's probably okay. But they may need to tighten up their controls and say, Yeah,
All I'm saying is, if this
we're gonna
was
have to put it all
even
in
a
here.
remotely normal presidency, yeah, that's a normal courtesy. But it's not, and we're asking citizens to treat it as an emergency situation, then you've got to act the same way.
Yeah.
Now, today, I understand they're asking for the vote to be delayed, which, of course, the guy's going to laugh at you.
Yeah.
And they'll go from there. Now, the thing that's weird for me is the guy was hiding these 3,000 emails.
That is weird.
Just to give people background. Scott Pruitt, Attorney General of the state of Oklahoma, the Trump EPA administrator nominee, refused to turn over 3,000 emails, which reflected communications he had with oil and gas companies and executives. And the reason that apparently why those should be seen, I mean, they should be seen just as a matter of morality. You're a public official. We should be able to see what you're doing. But beyond that, the legal basis for it is apparently there is a type of FOIA sunshine law in the state of Oklahoma. Florida has something similar, and there was actually a scandal about the use of private servers during the Jeb Bush administration about that, and he ended up having to turn them over after a court case. Here, this guy just apparently they've been asked for 2 years, and he just refused to turn them over. I don't know if you covered this yesterday or not.
Not really, but I mean the story kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah, I mean he just said no, I'm not giving it to
does.
Finally, someone went to court. How they got to federal court, I don't know. I'm still kind of curious about that.
Maybe
they did, and the federal judge ruled yesterday that hey, you got to turn him over. She said basically he's just flouting the law. He doesn't even have an argument for why he doesn't get to turn them over, which is always my favorite ones. So I'm just not giving it to him.
Right.
But so now, we'll see, who knows what he's going to do. But eventually they'll come out. It might come out a week. It might take 2 weeks. Who knows what it's going to take. And he's likely to be the EPA administrator before they come out, no matter what anybody does, which is the argument that you've made before about what the Senate might have argued. Senate Dems might have argued about moving the vote up. But what happens, I don't know. What type of email can we possibly expect? One where he says, okay, I'll do everything you want, or here's my copy of the reg, or whatever, all the things we know that happen, right? With Republicans, where industries write the regulations and the laws. It's ALEC light, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably what people anticipate finding there.
Maybe there's a bribe in there, but I doubt that's going to be in writing.
Yeah. Well, probably not. There's not a whole lot of hope that I got, with the margin being what it is, 52-48, there was always the possibility that some thing that's particularly disturbing to some small number of senators comes out. There's one who says, I oppose him because of policies. Okay, it's 51-49 now. And then you find an email that's particularly offensive to two more, maybe. But, usually people will just say, well he was a young man then.
How Puzder?
Yeah, Puzder.
How Puzder was stopped, frankly, was not us. We had the 48, and that was a condition precedent that was necessary. But he lost others because of all the different things. But he lost Republicans not because of our opposition, but because of a lot of different things. But I really think the clincher was his support for immigration reform. Ironically, I do. I think that pushed. That made McConnell. He just couldn't whip it. He couldn't whip it to 50, so that was that.
All right.
I don't think the EPA guy's Pruitt is gonna have anybody step aside for him. In my view, I don't know if one of the so-called moderates. I mean, are you going to get a Collins? I don't think so.
I doubt it. I mean, maybe, possibly just for something I don't know, but not 3+. They all hate the EPA.
Plus, I think you're probably going to lose Manchin anyway.
Yes.
So you're going to need 4.
Right. Probably true. So, yeah, it wasn't going to change anything, but the scheduling thinking needs a tweak. The schedule is set there by, the agreement would be made by Chuck Schumer, but remember that Chuck Schumer would be responding to
what his people want to go.
Yeah. And then
That's
saying,
human.
what's the difference? 9 o'clock. Why would you make me wait until 9 o'clock? You know what it's like to get a flight out of here? It's a holiday weekend as it is. Getting out of here.
You know what? It's like saying, you know what? Please go protest Trump in Melbourne. I said, well, I'm down here in Palm Beach County. That's a 2.5-hour drive. I got to get up early in the morning.
You know what traffic's going to be like? It's President's Day weekend.
I'm just saying, if you want to make convenience arguments, well, let's call the whole thing off because protesting isn't convenient. Calling your constituents isn't convenient. Going to a town hall isn't convenient. So that's just bad. I hate to use the word optics.
Yes. All right.
It's bad optics.
I'll agree. There's no reason why that should
They shouldn't do that again. I'll put it that way.
I don't think so. I tweeted it yesterday. Just maybe this is a good argument against making these kinds of unanimous consent agreements to bump the votes up. At this point, every hour counts, and though you can make a good argument about, I don't care whether the vote takes place at 9 or 1, if it's a Friday, meaning that you don't get started on the next 30-hour clock any sooner because everybody's going home. But with these some of these nominations, really an hour. I mean, a new scandal can develop in an hour. You might have to wait every single one of them out. You never know when somebody's going to find tape of that guy's wife on Oprah.
The other thing that I didn't follow it close enough, so this is on me. And it wasn't convenient for my life. I assume somebody asked him to turn over those emails as part of the confirmation process. Did he say no to the Senate?
I don't know. Maybe he must have, and maybe that's how it became a federal court issue. Maybe just because they asked in the context of the nomination.
Maybe, but so this issue of the missing emails is frankly another reason not to agree to anything to make it more convenient. But,
I mean,
what's done is done. It's going to go forward. Live and learn. I think. I think frankly, at 1 o'clock today, after the vote happens, people are going to be asking people who know, well, why did you move the vote up? And I'm not sure which way Schumer can look. I mean, what's he going to say out there on the steps?
The honest answer, so look to see whether or not he gives it, is we didn't know at the time that this court decision was going to come through. And really, even if it did come through, we weren't going to get the emails. They're railroading us on these nominations. They know very well that there's hidden information that if they can rush the nomination through, we won't get the information in time and we'll be stuck having to complain about a bad pick rather than blocking one. But, that's the reality of it. It was going to happen today. We just decided it ought to happen earlier today. And in hindsight, it doesn't look so good.
Yeah, I just remember what you're asking all your constituents to do.
Yes.
To inconvenience themselves. So, this is your livelihood.
Right.
You decided to be in the big chair. You got to lead by example.
Yeah. By the way, Justice got some information on this. Pruitt, I guess, is the one who told them to use the Open Records Act to get these things. It says here from a Think Progress piece, Pruitt repeatedly told senators, so I guess in the confirmation hearings, to submit Open Records Act requests for documents that show the nature of his relationship to oil and gas interests, which is remarkable. I should read more context than that. Did he
Holy moly, really?
Did he say that? Did they say, can you tell us, Mr. Pruitt, or Attorney General Pruitt, I guess, about your relationship with oil and gas interests in your state? And his answer was, if you want to know about my relationship with the oil and gas, go file a Freedom of Information Act request.
That's
Holy
incredible.
what?
I actually do now want to see how that's in any way an acceptable answer for a nominee.
Yeah, right. I don't know. You'll know as soon as you get your FOIA request, I guess. I don't know what my relationship was. You tell me when you get the answer. Yeah, on the eve of
Unbelievable.
confirmation vote, judge orders release of Pruitt emails. That's the piece from Think Progress, Samantha Page writing that. But, yeah, I'm trying to find out. Let me see if I can skim and find out if that's something he actually said in a hearing.
In a hearing?
Yeah.
Under oath?
And here's
Said,
our
yeah.
answer for the vote. Susan Collins will oppose the nomination, but Joe Manchin probably will support it. So that'll be a wash.
Yep.
So let's see. Pruitt, Sierra Club Legislative Director Melinda Pierce called Pruitt's lack of transparency a mockery of the confirmation process.
It is.
He
Now that I hear it, I hadn't followed it. It absolutely
really
is a mockery.
He repeatedly told the senators to submit Open Records Act requests for documents that show the nature of his relationship to the oil and gas interests. And an earlier Pulitzer Prize-winning investigation in the New York Times revealed that Pruitt had taken a letter written by an Oklahoma oil company and sent it to the EPA on
Yeah, I remember
state
that.
letterhead. Okay. He also sued the EPA numerous times. Senate Democrats say documentation of his relationship with fossil fuel companies is critical to evaluating his nomination to head the country's environmental agency. But what an answer. Can you tell us what your position is on these things? I could, but you could also file a FOIA request and find out. I don't even know why I'm here.
Why are you guys bothering me?
Right. You know.
What, do you have some constitutional duties here? What the hell? Leave
Why
me alone.
bother showing up? Just come with a sign that says file a FOIA request. And every time they ask you a question, just hold it up. Point to it. I already said this. You're wasting my time. If you want to know, go to court. Holy mackerel. Well, that's not good, but, you know, I guess that's sort of what you would expect out of that tells you a little bit about him, I guess. I mean, that's a very Trumpian thing to do, to just come and say, I don't have to answer your questions. I mean, you think I do because I could be legally compelled to turn the documents over, but that doesn't mean I have to just do it. Legally compel me if you can legally compel me. Go. Why are you asking me all these dumb questions? Wow. Well, I'm sure that wasn't exactly what he said, but that's the upshot of it. Anyway, that's pretty bad. So they shouldn't approve him, but they will. And he will likely be EPA administrator unless he falls down the stairs on his way to the job or something. I don't see the votes showing up to deny him the job. So, and again, I remind everybody, as I did in a comment on Daily Kos on the subject of slow walking all these nominations or Trump's complaints yesterday, among other things, of Democratic obstructionism, which not only, of course, is hypocritical, but do keep in mind if you're discussing things with people this weekend or any other time. Look, there hasn't been a nominee you've brought to the floor who has been prevented from taking office. Nobody's been blocked. People have dropped out, but that's their doing. Every vote that's been taken has been a confirmation, and frankly, by a margin that would not have secured you those appointments unless Democrats had done the work of reforming the filibuster for you. Your cabinet would be empty if we hadn't done what we did. You thank the Democrats for your cabinet. But I don't know if anybody's going to go do that. Any rate, okay, looks like it's time for Armando to get back to work, I guess, or else he dropped his phone in the toilet. I didn't hear that happening, but he's disconnected at this point. Thanks for stopping by, though. I did we always appreciate taking any chunk out of the day and giving us a new direction to look at some things, too. Because, like I said, there's a million directions we could easily have gone at this point. Why not talk about Pruitt since that's happening today? It's highly relevant. Let's see. We've had another a submission of kinds. Who sent me this? I've scrolled past this now. But let's see. I lost track of it, but somebody has... one of you has sent me a piece on Louise Mensch, the somewhat crazy Louise Mensch. And I think we have a lot of Louise Mensch fans, I think, in the listenership. But I'm very wary of her. She's very odd. And by the way, Louise Mensch, here we are. The Wrath of France has sent us this one. France42 on Twitter, The Wrath of France. Since you mentioned Louise Mensch, the former British MP who scooped U.S. media on Trump's Russian ties, this a Guardian piece by Julian Borger, written here in Washington. So interesting, maybe as background. I'll take a look at it too. The only person who pats themselves on the back more frequently, I think, though, than Louise Mensch these days is Donald Trump, who keeps referring to his tremendous electoral victory, et cetera, and how he's the least racist person you'll ever meet on the planet or whatever. No, Armando's back. But Louise Mensch keeps saying, not only does she keep throwing out her theory, she keeps saying in the last couple of days, I've seen it like 5 times, she says, I don't know when I'm going to get the Pulitzer for this, but I can only ask, hurry up already. She's basically insisting that she deserves a Pulitzer Prize for her last couple weeks of conspiracy theorizing, but who knows? Weirder things have happened. Armando, did you want to add something here?
It's funny because I censored myself by somehow pushing the wrong button. I just to finish on Pruitt, I was looking at before I blew up my connection on this issue. These requests are 2 years old. They were filed by various groups.
Oh.
I still don't know how it got to federal court, but but they appear to have been asked for by Senate Democrats, and he said what you said. Said, go file an open records request. It's like, okay.
Wow.
The other part of it is it's 10 days from the date of the order, which was yesterday. So unless you're going to delay the vote for 10 days, which they are not going to do, there's not much you can do.
Yeah. So you're going to find out that this guy has close ties to oil and gas and is the EPA administrator, which you thought was coming from the Trump administration.
Yeah, well, if you had a brain, you did. But if you decided that he was going to make America great again and he was going to stop all the he was going to drain the swamp, and which, on some level, this is part of my problem. Now I'm going to go in a complete tangent here. My problem with the discussions of the election and why people voted for Trump and why they didn't vote for Democrats. So, the Wall Street and the swamp and all, that's a bunch of hooey. They didn't think Trump was draining anything, in my view. Listen, I give them more credit for intelligence than I think people who support them do, the Chris Arnaids of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you believe Chris Arnaid, then these people, these white working class people that he loves so much, are just the biggest idiots in the world. I
may believe him on that, but okay, I say what you mean. You want to give them the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. No, what they meant by the swamp was
the benefit of the doubt. Don't you?
Mm-hmm.
But
sure.
But that means they voted for the other parts of his message.
Yes.
And that's the part people don't like.
To the extent that they wanted the swamp drained, they wanted it drained of Democrats.
Democrats and, women, people of color, Muslims, walls.
They consider that all to be
I just think people underestimate how powerful that was as an appeal. And it's like, they didn't vote for him despite that stuff. They voted for him because of that stuff. Anyway, that's my old tangent. I fight about it all the time. And just a point that you could discuss or not, because I'm going to leave now, is the Pew poll. There's one group that still loves Trump. White, no college. He's got 56% approval. They weren't flipped. These weren't flipping independent votes. These are pretty steady. These are Trump supporters, and to pretend they were the last little bit that he got on his wagon to get over the top is nonsense. That was the base. That was his first win. He got the rest of the Republicans on. I mean, I think I can make a very strong argument that you could say, you know what I need? I need college-educated Republicans and see if I can appeal to them. And maybe the message isn't, break up the banks for those people. But no one wants to talk about that, and I understand why. I mean, you want your ideas to win out, so you sort of push out, and I do too. I mean, look, I've accepted, for example, the trade message, the one that I think is right, just doesn't appeal to anybody. So I got to suck it up politically myself. So let's have some reality there. But anyway, that's my last little bit of the rant. I'll listen as I head over to do things I need to do. But thanks for giving me a little Friday opportunity.
Okay, no problem. Thanks for joining us.
Talk to you later.
Have a good weekend. Enjoy the long weekend.
You too.
Stay out of the traffic. Okay. All right. Well, let's see. We should make a quick roundup of all the many of the things. I think a lot of the stories today really, honestly, can be headline, little bit of discussion, move on. I'll be missing a lot of the detail, no doubt, but there's some good headlines out there, or interesting headlines out there anyway. Let's see. In no particular order, in the order the reverse order in which they were found and listed on Twitter, I guess, chronologically speaking. All right. Where are we? One, Washington Post piece. Trump family's elaborate lifestyle is a logistical nightmare at taxpayer expense. We got to put that one on the record. Basic gist of this one is it costs $1 bazillion every time Jackass goes to Mar-a-Lago, and he's doing it 3 weekends in a row now. But in addition to him going to Mar-a-Lago, remember that every time he goes to Mar-a-Lago, not only are they moving him and the Secret Service and all the aides and the press and everybody to Mar-a-Lago and back and securing Mar-a-Lago. But, and also remember Mar-a-Lago is coastal, and so that means Coast Guard has to be called up to patrol the shoreline. I mean, unbelievable amount of trouble for this thing. But on top of it all, Melania comes with them. They got to pick her up from New York. They got to move her either from New York to Washington or New York to Florida to meet him. And in the middle of all this, Ivanka is doing her thing. I don't know if Ivana has any protection. Good question. But Ivanka is doing her thing. By the way, Marla Maples and Tiffany, do they have Secret Service details? I haven't read anything about that one. That'd be interesting. I mean, Tiffany was kind of active in the election a little bit. I don't know. Anyway, that's not even the half of it, because it's described here in the Post. In addition to Trump going to Mar-a-Lago on Friday, on Saturday, Trump's sons Eric and Don Jr. Remember the firewall between Trump and his businesses because he's so totally separate from everything. They are going with their Secret Service details 8,000 miles away over to the UAE, United Arab Emirates, attending the grand opening of a Trump brand golf resort in what they're calling the Beverly Hills of Dubai. Are there any hills? I guess dunes. Beverly Dunes of Dubai. Meanwhile, New York police keeping watch outside Trump Tower, where Melania and Barron are. Plus, in addition to this 3 weeks in a row at the Winter White House, as he's calling Mar-a-Lago, the tiny township, as they say, of Bedminster, New Jersey, is preparing for the daunting prospect that the local Trump golf course will serve as a sort of northern White House as many as 10 weekends a year. The summer White House will be up there. Never mind, of course, all the ridiculousness during the campaign about Trump was saying, I'll probably never leave the White House because there's so much work to be done. And okay, fine. So he's not going to deliver on that one. The security issues, just keeping him secure, are enormous. The security issues for the country, keeping our secrets when he's having National Security Council meetings out on a dining patio, are enormous. But bigger story, I guess, that I really wanted to get out of this was Trump's 3 Mar-a-Lago trips since the inauguration have probably cost the federal treasury about $10 million, based on figures used in an October government report analyzing White House travel, including money for Coast Guard units to patrol the exposed shoreline and other military security and staffing expenses associated with moving the apparatus of the presidency. Palm Beach County officials plan to ask Washington to reimburse tens of thousands of dollars a day in expenses for deputies handling added security and traffic issues around the cramped Florida island whenever Trump is in town. New York City is paying $500,000 a day to guard Trump Tower, figuring on about $183 million a year. The Post also reported the Secret Service and U.S. Embassy staffers paid nearly $100,000 in hotel room bills to support Eric Trump's trip to Uruguay to promote the Trump-branded condo tower there. This is an expensive way to conduct business, and the president should recognize that, said Tom Fitton, president of the conservative group Judicial Watch, which closely tracked President Barack Obama's family vacation costs, and said it intends to continue the effort for the Trump administration. I believe the line in the tweet that came along with this link was that they have spent something like, already in the first month, 1/6 of what the Obamas spent on vacation expenses over the course of their 8 years, which is pretty remarkable. In other words, in 1 month, they've spent more than a year's worth of Obama spending on vacations, and are on, of course, record pace to smash through that. In addition to all of that, by the way, of course, they mention the important stuff. DOD and Secret Service both now seeking to rent space in Trump Tower, where leasing a floor can cost $1.5 million a year, though neither agency has disclosed any details. And, of course, the excuse being, well, he's not vacationing when he goes to Mar-a-Lago or back up to New York. He's working every day. And it's true. He has to stay connected. By the way, in case you're wondering, Judicial Watch estimated Obama's travel-related expenses totaled for the 8 years nearly $97 million. And that's nothing to sneeze at, obviously, but it's been $10 million on Mar-a-Lago in a month. Just Mar-a-Lago. And he hasn't even gone to Bedminster yet. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see how this totals up. It's not going to come out looking good, but what can I tell you? All right, that reminds me that yesterday there was a bit of a Twitter rant, I guess. Stuff you've heard me say before, but I thought I'd kind of weave it all together. People who don't listen to the show were perhaps taken aback by some of this yesterday. But, it reminded me, one, that the Trump Towers deal that they were going to, of course, be paying him, Secret Service and DOD would be paying him for the space that they need a lot of, by the way, apparently. And I was asked on Twitter, and we've discussed it a little bit before, there is some precedent for this rent thing. That is to say, I think that the Secret Service needed some space at Joe Biden's home in Delaware when he was back there, and the space that they occupied, they offered up rent for, because you can't, it's private property, you're taking it for government use, some rent is due. Of course, some rent was due for the protective detail for the Clintons at their Chappaqua house. That's just that they have reportedly refused to take payment for it. So rent was due. They just said, yeah, never mind. We don't like the optics of taking rent from you. But apparently it's fine with Donald Trump, which, of course, sort of led me to the question of, well, we've asked it before. Why are entire floors of Trump Tower the most desirable real estate in New York City, okay? Why are there constantly entire floors available? When The Apprentice needed space to be produced, boom, we got a whole floor for you. When the campaign needed space, boom, we got a whole floor. In fact, 2 floors that we got for you. What Secret Service needs a floor? $1.5 million a year. Prime real estate, okay? Fifth Avenue. Everybody wants to be here. Everybody wants to be here now more than ever because I'm the president, okay? Still, a whole floor available for the Secret Service? Yeah, no problem. I've got one. Whole floor available for the Department of that's a good Department of Defense? Yeah, I got another one of those too. The most desirable real estate. Maybe that's all fake. Well, it is. You and I all know that. We've talked about it a million times, that most of his business is crap. And I had a good time reminding everybody. Apparently a lot of people, this is news to. I shared that, what was it, Cinemontage piece about how the editors working on The Apprentice had to work so hard in order to turn him into what looked like a legitimate businessman so that he could be sold as a business success, and how that then led to we'd also been sold along about the same time on the idea that a successful businessman would be a good idea as a politician. Here's one. We faked it with this guy, and how they thought it was a comedy that they were working on at first. Apparently that's still news to a lot of people. That needs to be shared further and wider, I guess. Anyway, all right, let's get back to zipping around the headlines, because there's so much more. Oh, Athena really liked the Department of Defense. Well, yeah, we're all like that. A good fart joke goes a long way. All right, what other great headlines needed to be rounded up? Let's see. Well, NPR had a good one, along with, where's the, I knew I had more of this. There's, did I just open it up on this one, or was it this one? No, I don't know where it is. Okay, well, we got a lot of headlines about people sort of openly now questioning the president's mental health as well as fitness for office. Did I ever forget that? I never really did get through all of E.J. Dionne's thing, did we? Where did we leave off on that one? I don't know. That was more important to see the details of it then. But you've likely seen that already, now that I think about it. Okay, we'll go back to our survey of headlines. NPR had a headline that made the roundup for this morning. As I mentioned, there was a headline somebody had out there, and I don't think I even set it aside, but Democrats now openly questioning his mental abilities here. This one removed a little bit from the politics of it. NPR, as presidents live longer, doctors debate whether to test for dementia. That's a sort of a hands-off the politics approach. It's very interesting. In a series of recent interviews, President Donald Trump's longtime personal physician, Dr. Harold N. Bornstein, remember him, told the New York Times that our new commander-in-chief has what amounts to a pretty unremarkable medical chart. That's an interesting way of putting it, given that originally he said, what did he say? Astonishingly excellent medical chart. Now pretty unremarkable. So that was the later interviews where he realized or revealed, okay, he's on statin for high cholesterol, which is not, extraordinarily excellent, by the way, but it's normal. Baby aspirin for his hands, I guess. Oh, heart health, sorry. An occasional antibiotic for rosacea. And Propecia for hair growth, which really he could stand to back off of a little bit. Anyway, it does say at 70, Trump is the oldest American president ever to take office. Couple his age with his family history of dementia. His father, Fred, developed Alzheimer's disease in his 80s. And one could argue that the question of baseline cognitive testing for the U.S. head of state has taken on a new relevance. An assortment of fairly simple tests exists that can establish a reference point for cognitive capacity and detect early symptoms of mental decline. Or you could look at YouTubes of him testifying before Congress in the 90s and talking now and see the mental decline for yourself. One of the most common such screens, blah, 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 mini mental status examination is what it's called. Series of questions that gauges attention, orientation, and short-term memory. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes to complete. That's, of course, too long for him and should give you a pretty good indication of where he is on this stuff. Okay, look, I'm the president, all right? I don't have time to sit down and take a 5 or 10 minutes to, you know what my time is worth? I will tell you for the next hour and 17 minutes. Yet admitting vulnerability of any kind isn't something politicians have been keen to do. The true health of politicians has likely been cloaked in secrecy since the days of Mesopotamian kings, but definitely since the Wilson administration. And a nice historical review of hiding medical problems, and we do have that tradition in America, no doubt about it. But it also reminds us that only a generation ago, Dr. Jacob Appel from the Mount Sinai School of Medicine, a psychiatrist there, says, only a generation ago, our political leaders, like the rest of us, were likely to die of heart disease or cancer in their 60s and 70s, what we now think of as late middle age. Teddy Roosevelt died at 60, And he liked to think he was in astonishingly excellent health, right? FDR, 63. Lyndon Johnson, who outlived the office, of course. FDR died in office, but died at 64. All before dementia usually sets in. It's a cruel Darwinian yin to the yang of medical progress that as we live longer and longer, new health problems like mental deterioration can emerge. And we always have the medical deterioration. Anyway, so lots of issues about personal privacy as well, raised by Dr. Arthur Kaplan. Look, now he's at New York University. I've tracked his movements for a while since I met him once at a CNN green room somewhere. And, very interesting to see him moving around. But he's expressing some concern for their privacy, but also, obviously, the need for some kind of transparency about the mental stability of your president. It's all very interesting, all good reading. I recommend it to you, along with other stories I want to bring to your attention. So let's see. Moving on. Yes, this was an interesting one. Wall Street Journal had this one. And I think the headline pretty much speaks for itself. So we'll leave it at that. Pentagon. The Pentagon finds it has no records approving Mike Flynn's Russian TV pay. The story being, of course, about his trip to Moscow to give the paid speech at the RT television network's 10th anniversary dinner, where he was seated at the table with Vladimir Putin and Jill Stein. Still kind of baffled by that one. Unless she was a regular on RT, which is possible, because RT did, for a long time, certainly prior to this past election and Trump's Russian connection, RT hosted a lot of programs that were very popular among Democrats and progressives. I didn't really usually watch any of them, but that's because I watched nothing. But I appeared on one or two of them, and I was always leery of the whole thing until, when I found out RT is Russia's television. So what are they doing with this? This doesn't really make any sense. But like the Tom Hartman, when he had a TV, does he still have a TV program? He has a strong radio programs right here on Netroots Radio. And he had a TV show on RT, and there's been others. I can't even remember. I don't remember which network is which, because when you go to these studios, sometimes the thing's unmarked. I have no idea where you are. It's a studio, and I don't know what they're doing with it. I don't know where they're putting the. I just go there and I sit in front of the camera and I say what I say, and then it goes. I don't know what network it's on, but I've been on it a couple of times, maybe twice. I don't do a whole hell of a lot of TV. But anyway, so he went to give this speech, right? And everybody's aware of that. But apparently, as a former military officer, he, one, needed to disclose all payments from foreign governments or foreign government-controlled entities like RT to the Pentagon and get approval prior to going, and there's no record of him having done that. And the emoluments clause applies to him as a high-ranking military officer as well. Normally, again, you can only take those emoluments, including, according to the guidelines, anyway, if not statute, and certainly not in the Constitution, the guidelines say that fee for services would be covered by this. But apparently he sought no prior approval from the Pentagon, and as far as the emoluments clause goes, no waiver from Congress, though by statute at some point Congress delegated the duty of waving this stuff through for military officers to the Secretary of State and the Secretary of the relevant branch of the armed services. But again, neither have any paperwork. So I guess where we are now is Flynn went and he gave this speech and he collected the check in violation of Pentagon disclosure rules and the constitutional emoluments clause. But he's out. So we'll just leave it at that, right? The FBI now saying, yes, he lied to us, but no, we're not going to be prosecuting him about it. Well, that leaves impeachment, I guess. And yes, reminder, you can be impeached even though you have already left office. It doesn't matter. The impeachment penalties go beyond removal from office. and they can bar you from further federal service, which is why they should have done it to Elliot Abrams the first time. Anyway, like I said, moving on to other headlines. This one from The Hill. I found this one kind of interesting too. Just a reminder. Encrypted apps spark new questions for Trump-era workers. The Trump guys are wary of leaks, believe it or not. They don't want to leak when they don't know they're leaking. And so they're using some, in some cases, encrypted texting apps to have behind-the-scenes discussions. It says here, White House staffers are using Confide out of fear that President Trump is planning to crack down on leaks in the media. So that creates a difficulty for them. But even more, and that wasn't a message coming through on Confide, by the way, but a message nonetheless. But this gets in the way of all sorts of federal transparency laws, the Presidential Records Act, etc. It may just be flat out illegal for them to use these things, but what are you going to do? How are you going to track down all these staffers and find out what they're using? It's going to be an enormous problem to keep track of these things, especially in a White House that isn't inclined to look to the brass tacks of things. But speaking of security and violation of all the laws, where is this one? I know we must have put this one aside somewhere. But yesterday, in addition to Puzder dropping out and Flynn being forced to resign, there was also a story, and now I don't see it, and that's too bad because it's a good one, of 6 staffers at the White House being dismissed, some of them actually also being escorted from the building, apparently, by security for failure to clear their, or failure to pass their FBI background checks and security clearances. They can't get security clearances. One of the people that was mentioned, why is this one, it's bizarre that this isn't here. Is it not available? Did I click on the wrong thing at some point? I don't know. Anyway, it should be here. I'll dig it up for you. But they kicked a bunch of them out. One of the people was Trump's scheduler, like the president's, I guess, personal scheduler. The person who actually keeps the guy's schedule daily, didn't make her security clearance, and she was. Let's see. I have to Google in the news here. White House staffers dismissed. Let's see if that brings it up. Here we are. Politico had it. White House dismisses 6 over failed background checks. They only named 1, I think, out of the 6. But she's Floridian, so maybe it rings a bell for Armando. Caroline Wiles, daughter of Susan Wiles, Trump's Florida campaign manager, former chief of staff to Governor Rick Scott. Apparently a big muckety-muck in Republican politics down there. Got her daughter this job. I don't know what's the problem, but she's out. But don't worry, they're getting her another job at the Treasury Department, which doesn't need to be secure, apparently. I don't know what the problem was, although, I spent 2 seconds saying in Google, Caroline Wiles arrest. Did I get anything? Yeah, I got a drunk driving hit and something else 10 years ago. Whatever. She's a young woman. Happened when she was 20, 21, although if it was 20, you got a problem. I don't know. Maybe she failed to disclose it. I don't think that's normally going to keep you out as long as you do disclose it. Who knows? Anyway, doesn't matter. She's going over to Treasury. And by the way, as it says here, this is interesting. Wiles, who resigned Friday, that would be last Friday, it says, before the background check was completed, she was appointed Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, I guess, before inauguration in January. But she was continuing on as his scheduler, I guess, pending the clearance. And I guess she might have needed Senate approval. I don't know. Deputy Assistant Secretary, if it goes down to that level. 2 sources close to Wiles said she will get another job in Treasury. So that's pretty interesting too, right? You fail your background check, they kick you out of the White House. No problem. We'll make you Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Treasury. Oh wait, that needs security clearance too? All right, we'll give you something else at Treasury. The point is, we'll just keep giving you. I think if you fail your security clearance, be like, you know what? I owe Susan a lot, but your daughter's got to tell us if she's been busted. we can forgive it if she says so. I don't know if that's the story. Anyway, I found that very interesting. Thought you might too. Might be something you want to have in your pocket, since I don't have it in my pocket app over the weekend. Let's see. Other things that we really have to get to here. Won't be able to parse through this one, but I want to point out James Linzel. Linzel? Do you say Linzel or Linzel? Had tweeted to me, don't miss this. Gold, Jerry. It's gold. It's a Donald Trump online poll. I had heard that he was doing this, just to drum up support among his big fan base. He picked out, for instance, question number 20. Do you believe the media creates false feuds within our party in order to make us seem divided? Sounds like it's a good source for gold. I want to recommend it to you. Maybe we can sort through it. Perhaps it'll make a fun diversion for Monday. But if we don't get to it, you'll have a chance to look at it too. It's over at action.donaldjtrump.com. So you got to wade into that swamp. But beautiful questions like, do you believe that the mainstream media has reported unfairly on our movement? What do you think? Do you trust MSNBC? Do you trust CNN? Interesting. Do you trust Fox News? On which issues does the mainstream media do the worst job of representing Republicans? Select as many as may apply. So, bit of a slanted look at things, but that's what's going on in Trump world, in case you need to keep an eye on those things. Let's see. Yes, I did mention that Flynn was revealed to have lied to the FBI. I do believe that all the major outlets have that one now. But the morning's news is, so what? We're not going to prosecute him. So, whoops. Another piece that I meant to discuss a little bit with Greg, but we didn't get the chance, but I'm reminded by Judy Vincent, Dr. Judy. We'll call her Dr. Judy, why not? Out in Hawaii sends me this one. This is a topic we've discussed on the show many times and referenced thereafter. The new news is that an appeals court has struck down Florida's law banning doctors from asking patients about guns, docs and glocks. You remember that one? Doctors in Florida can legally counsel their patients about gun risks under a federal appeals court ruling that strikes down that stupid law. That's the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, meeting in Atlanta, ruling Thursday that Florida's National Rifle Association-backed law violated doctors' First Amendment rights. I don't know that you need to know that much more about that one. It's an interesting topic. We'll give Greg a chance to talk about it next time he's on. And I think we'll probably end up doing a Monday show. But hey, no promises. We got to be careful about these things. Just thought I'd bring that up. I knew you'd all be interested in having that on the record. Other things you need to, I'm really just do the speed round here. The headlines are as interesting as ever, anything. It's going to make linking hell. Sorry, Scott, but I think I can round them all up for you. Trump Winery. Eric Trump owns that one. The Trump Winery seeks what? More foreign help. Yes, they're looking for waivers so that they can hire more foreign workers, because consistency and honesty in the Trump name is really the top. Did you even remember that he had a winery? He does. It's in Virginia. They want to bring in nearly 24 foreign workers. The Trump Winery is seeking 23. That's as near to 24 as you can get without going over, I guess, or hitting the nail on the head. 23 workers from overseas to plant and harvest grapes, because nobody knows how to harvest grapes. You can convince me that that's a specialized task, I guess, if you want to be super gentle with the grapes, but you can't train Americans for this. So what are they looking for? They're going to be using H-2A visa program, permitting U.S. employers to hire foreign agricultural laborers for temporary work as long as no qualified Americans want the jobs instead. Virginia Democrats, apply for the jobs. Maybe you want them, maybe you don't, but you should say you do, and then they won't get the H-2A visas. But who am I to deny poor foreign workers their income? I'm not into that sort of thing. Anyway, that's everybody he uses over at Mar-a-Lago anyway as well. So, look, more hypocrisy. But why not? We'll add the Trump Winery story to the pile. Yes. Oh, I mentioned that there were more whisper stories about Trump being insane. That's true. Here's one from the Daily Beast. This among the journalists specifically those who were at the press conference yesterday, and some amazing quotes in that one. Let's see. This one's taking its sweet time opening up, so maybe... Oh, no, we can't get off the topic. Sorry, because I'm stuck in this one. All right, let's see. It's the Daily Beast. We'll just wait. Journalists whisper at Trump's crazy press conference, "This is insane." In his most unhinged confrontation yet, the president said, "I'm not ranting and raving. I love this." Maybe too much. I told you he said that, and I wasn't kidding. Speaking of that, by the way, I mentioned to you the confrontation that he had with the Orthodox Jewish correspondent there, and how he basically said, "You're a liar because you said your question was going to be easy and it isn't." There's a piece here in the Atlantic, a Peter Beinart piece. I know some of you probably not fans. Some others of you are fine with it. But an interesting topic. Why Trump can't answer questions about anti-Semitism. I am confused about that. I'm puzzled by that. Because it really was an easy question. What are you going to do about anti-Semitism? You might say, I don't know specifically what we can do to try and stop specific acts of anti-Semitism. They happen at just such a low street crime level. I don't know what we can do about that, but we can say anti-Semitism is particularly noxious and I can't stand it and I hate it and we should stop it. But he never says that. Why not? Presidents, the subhead says, are supposed to show empathy for their anxious constituents, but when it comes to anti-Semitism, the only person Trump shows empathy for is, for himself. This is true. The most bizarre and unsettling moment. He agrees. Me and Peter, we do. In President Trump's bizarre and unsettling press conference this Thursday came near the end. Trump, who had been insulting the journalists questioning him for more than 90 minutes, declared that I want a friendly reporter. Then he spied Jake Turks, Turx, amazingly enough, of the magazine Ami, a bearded man attired in the white shirt and black velvet kippah. That would be the, sometimes in Yiddish called the yarmulke, or here they say skull cap. I've always been weirded out by that phrase, but anyway, that term, typical of ultra-Orthodox Jews. Are you a friendly reporter? Trump asked. Watch how friendly he is. Wait. Watch how friendly he is. Go ahead. This is not normal. Presidents don't usually announce when they want an easy question. It's possible that Trump saw Turk's distinctive appearance and guessed that he would be friendly, since the ultra-Orthodox supported Trump at substantially higher rates than other Jews. In any case, the encounter initially unfolded as Trump desired. And that's the funny part. Despite what some of my colleagues may have been reporting, declared Turks, I haven't seen anybody in my community accuse either you or anyone on your staff of being anti-Semitic. We understand that you have Jewish grandchildren. You are their Zayde. Grandfather, that's Yiddish. Zayde. Trump responded, thank you. But then Turks pivoted, and it's not really... All right. However, he went on, what we are concerned about and what we really haven't heard being addressed is the uptick in anti-Semitism and how the government is planning to take care of it. There's been a report out that 48 bomb threats, and I think it's more than that now, have been made against Jewish centers all across the country in the last couple of weeks. There are people who are committing anti-Semitic acts or threatening to, and he gets cut off. At this point, Trump grew angry. He said he was going to ask a very simple, easy question, Trump exclaimed, interrupting Turks. And it's not a simple question. Not a fair question. Not a fair question? How in the what? He goes on. Number one, I am the least anti-Semitic person that you've ever seen in your entire life. Now, this is the guy who looks at himself in the mirror. He's telling you he's an ultra-Orthodox Jew. I think that guy's less anti-Semitic than you are, but who knows? Then he berated Turks some more. See, he lied about it. He was going to get up and ask a very straight, simple question. So, welcome to the world of media. It's the simplest question there is. Then Trump returned to his alleged anti-Semitism. Let me just tell you something. I hate the charge. I find it repulsive. I hate even the question, because people that know me, and you heard the Prime Minister, you heard Netanyahu yesterday. Did you hear him, Bibi? He said, I've known Donald Trump for a long time. And then he said, forget it. So You should take that instead of having to get up and ask a very insulting question like that. Now, I could go on for a bit here. Let's see what Beinert has to say about this. Put aside the spectacle of a president berating a reporter for not asking a friendly question. More bizarre is the fact that Turk's question was actually quite friendly. He began by denying that anyone in his community considers Trump an anti-Semite, and then asked what the government would do about a rise in anti-Semitic incidents. Trump, however, disregarded the latter half, accused Turks of calling him an anti-Semite, even though he said exactly the opposite. On its face, Trump's response makes no sense. The best way to understand it is that the product of narcissism so epic that it crowds out moral concern. Turks asked about Jewish fears of anti-Semitism, but the only thing that interested Trump was the possibility that people might consider him anti-Semitic. So he turned a question about Jewish victimization into a parable of his own victimization by a Jewish reporter. And he wasn't even victimized by him, I would add. The same narcissism was on display the day before when an Israeli journalist asked Trump about a sharp rise in anti-Semitic incidents and asked whether your administration is playing with xenophobia and maybe racist tones. Here, too, Trump was handed an easy opportunity to offer reassurances to anxious American Jews, and here, too, Trump spoke mostly about himself. I love the answer about Netanyahu, by the way. You heard him. Netanyahu was here, and he's a Jew. He's a huge Jew. He's the Jewish Jew, arguably, in Jewdom, being the Prime Minister of Israel, right? And you heard him. He said, what did he say about me and anti-Semitism? He said, I've known him for a long time. Now, Netanyahu has known about Hitler for a long time, too. But hey, and he's known me for a long time. And then he said, forget it. What does that mean? None of that actually helps your point. But anyway, Trump spoke about himself. Even the day before, he said, he begins by noting, I won 306 electoral college votes, which he didn't. Then he vaguely promised that we are going to stop crime in this country. We're going to do everything within our power to stop long-simmering racism and every other thing that's going on, because a lot of bad things have been taking place over a long period of time. And finally, in his only comment about Jews, he noted that he has so many Jewish friends, and that's in bracketed Jewish, so many friends, a daughter who happens to be here right now, a son-in-law, and 3 beautiful grandchildren. He didn't say anything about rising anti-Semitism at all. The problem isn't that Trump is anti-Semitic, it's that he's more upset by the charge than by actual anti-Semitism growing around the country, some of which his supporters are perpetrating. He's like the Breitbart types who think whites suffer more from being accused of racism than African Americans do from actually experiencing it. Presidents are supposed to show empathy for their anxious constituents, but when it comes to anti-Semitism, the only person Trump shows empathy for is himself. And I would suggest that that's probably true in all cases. Anti-Semitism and anti-black racism, anti-Latino racism, you name it, he's more concerned about having anybody bring it up in his presence than anything else. So yes, yesterday, of course, this piece you can read for yourself. The Daily Beast had all of the reporters whispering to one another, plus I think a reference to a senator who texted a reporter friend off the record, basically saying the same thing. This one is chock full of whispers in the press corps about how crazy Trump really is. So you'll want to read that. You'll want to share it. Read it to your children. It's a bedtime story. That'll make them feel great. All right. Yes, another in the round of staff shakeups yesterday. Reports, this one here from TPM, but reports from all over the country. Trump's pick to succeed Flynn as National Security Advisor. That would have been retired Vice Admiral Robert Harward, like Harvard with a W, Harward, turned down the president's offer of the position and put out a statement that basically made it pretty clear that it's like, yeah, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. The president's crazy. I'm not mixing myself up in that. Forget about it. You might never find anybody sane to take this job, which is a pretty huge problem. Anyway, let's see. We'll open that one up, although maybe I should stop opening all of these because I think it's causing lots of loading problems. If we're just going to read the headlines, we might as well do that. This one, let's see, came in by Twitter yesterday, and I had seen it, but I shared it on Twitter yesterday when I did, But who sent me this one? I don't know if I can dig this one up and give credit to our tweeter or not. But, yeah, oh, there it was. Dang, and I just scrolled right past it, too. But one more try to see if I can find it correctly. But one of the papers up in Canada, Toronto, here we are, L. Addison Bradford, I think. Did you say, oh, was that, oh no, that was, although it could have been the same person. Dang, I missed it now. But thank you to L. Addison Bradford for making this suggestion, by the way. It's to the point where we need a Kagro in the Morning evening edition. Of course, that would be K-I-T-E, I guess, kite. And that's a weird hashtag, but a good one. I like it. Inadvertently, we've stumbled on a good one. I am getting to the point where I can't wait for the morning to share these stories either. And, yeah, I hope I never actually give in to that temptation. Dang, where was the tweet about the paper in Toronto? And I don't think it was even from any of our normal Canadian correspondence, as we might put it. But this a Toronto looks like maybe one of their. I don't know. It has the format of one of those like alternative weekly, but Toronto Metro News is the most I can make out of it. I don't know if it's the name of the paper or not, but this was interesting. Just they're having fun with it up there in Canada when the Prime Minister came down to visit. I guess at some point they screwed his name up and called him what? Joe Trudeau? Because that rhymes, maybe, Joe Trudeau, but they didn't get his name correct. Anyway, this is the way the headline teaser had it up in the corner of the front of the paper here. Melissa McCarthy impersonator Sean Spicer screws up the PM's name. I thought that was a fun one and worth sharing too. All right, let's see. I'll share with you in the roundup, just so you have the background on it, the Washington Post's report in which they say Flynn, in his FBI interview, denied discussing Russian or sanctions with the Russian ambassador. But the conclusion is that he was lying, but they won't be prosecuting him. And it may be that they decided not to prosecute him, not so much necessarily to do the administration a favor, but that they expect that he'll try to weasel out of the charges. What do we mean by that? We know, I mean, it seems nuts, right? How could Flynn sit there with the FBI and deny discussing sanctions with the Russian ambassador when he likely knows, as former DIA director, that those discussions would have been taped and they could just play it for him point blank? It may be that he's parsing words. If he's playing the it depends on what the meaning of the word is game, in a sense. In his January 24th interview, he tells the FBI that he didn't discuss sanctions with the ambassador. Possibly, it says, several officials, they say, told the reporters at the Post it's unclear whether prosecutors would attempt to bring a case, in part because Flynn may parse the definition of the word sanctions. He also followed his denial to the FBI by saying he couldn't recall all of the conversation. But it may be that apparently Flynn's admission was, we talked about the expulsion of diplomats, which was part of the sanctions package, but also part of the sanctions package were economic sanctions, and it may be that in his mind, or he may claim in his mind, if the case is brought not on the substance, but rather on the lying to the FBI, I didn't lie to you. What I think of as sanctions is the economic sanctions. The expulsion of diplomats, that's a different thing. That is a sanction. But when I say sanctions, I think of dollars changing hands or being, assets being frozen, penalties being imposed. I separated the expulsion of diplomats from the economic sanctions of the freezing of assets or what have you. And that's wrong. but it might just cause enough confusion if that's handed to a jury where, along with instructions that, he has to be aware of what he's saying as a falsehood in order for you to convict him here. And it's not clear that he is. As dumb as the parsing is, you might think he was doing that. All right. Let's see. We have a couple of other items that we might be able to squeeze in. This is one I think that I need to raise some awareness because not everybody is up to speed on this one. I don't know if it's true necessarily because it's one of those getting inside the minds of someone else stories, but I want to make people aware of it, lest we spend another weekend believing that somehow Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump are moderating influences that you can depend on in this administration. This Vanity Fair piece by Emily Jane Fox ought to put you on notice. Jared Kushner emerges as Trump's true believer. Far from being a moderating influence on his father-in-law, Kushner, I don't know how he says it, has embraced his inner Bannon. Oh dear. How are all these Jewish people embracing their inner Bannon? Between Boris Epstein, I put the sh in the wrong part of the name there, and Jared Kushner, it's getting a little bit troublesome. Like I said, they really are going to have to read these guys the Riot Act come Purim time. If you know the story, you'll see why. Let me see if I can't squeeze some of this story in here by way of explanation. It was a balmy Saturday evening at Mar-a-Lago. That hardly seems to be important, but it's here. And for the second consecutive weekend in his month-long presidency, Donald Trump has retreated to his Palm Beach winter White House to clear his head, take some meetings, and leave behind him the chaos of the swamp and his rapidly cannibalistic West Wing. Rapidly? That's what it says. He was joined by Shinzo Abe, the Japanese prime minister, as well as various top aides. By most accounts, Trump enjoys a rare form of quietude at Mar-a-Lago. I watched him hold court. He was so comfortable in his own skin and so relaxed. Douglas Brinkley, the presidential historian and Vanity Fair contributing editor, told the New York Times. Mar-a-Lago, which doubled its initiation fee to $200,000 before Trump's inauguration, has since morphed into a breeding ground for well-wishers, influence peddlers, hangers-on, and others who can afford its extravagant dues. This is just by way of setting the scene, and we should probably skip over this, except for the fact that apparently the waiters that they were serving everybody, the Mr. Trump's wedge salad, they have that on the menu there. I like that. So they should have, is it one of those places that's now going to have Department of Defense fries on their menu, just dumb things. But all right, he likes wedge salad. Mr. Trump's. Everybody wants the most fabulous salad in the world. It's a wedge of iceberg lettuce. Big whoop. Anyway, it goes on to tell the story of the outbreak of the incident in North Korea and how everybody was having a fun time watching that happen. And then he gets up and goes to the wedding and all that stuff, all that nonsense. I don't even know what that's doing in here. Let's see. The international crisis merely underscored one closer to home. Trump's first 24 days in office has become a leak-filled mess, with the fortunes of various aides rising and falling in rapid frequency. Goes on to talk about Steve Bannon, Stephen Miller, Sean Spicer, etc. Really, the upshot of this thing, though, is a couple paragraphs down. Trump's son-in-law and advisor, Jared Kushner, appeared frustrated in the West Wing. It was reported early on. They had some disagreements there about the way to approach various items on the agenda. But it turns out Kushner, apparently, in his role as senior advisor, occupies a small office, but actually the one physically closest to the Oval Office, thus in nearest proximity to the president. David Axelrod once worked there. David Plouffe, I never really learned how to pronounce his name. So it's a very special spot. However, he's never in there. Why is he never in there? This story goes on to point out Kushner has been spending all of his time hanging out, reportedly, in Steve Bannon's office, the war room, as they call it, slightly further away from the Oval Office. Why give up that proximity? It's very telling if that's in fact the case. So very worrisome, despite the fact that He was alleged to have changed the president's mind with respect to the LGBT executive orders that had been threatened. And despite the fact that he was reported early on as privately assuring friends and business leaders that Trump isn't really the extremist that he was advertised to be, it turns out that Kushner is under Bannon's influence very heavily. This despite the objections, apparently, of Kushner's brother, Josh, a successful venture capitalist, it says here, who runs the healthcare startup Oscar. Okay, anybody familiar? I don't know. He has reportedly expressed his disapproval of all of these measures. Several sources say that Ivanka Trump is also concerned about the various executive orders and things that Jared has pulled back from opposing, particularly as it relates to Dreamers. That would be the immigration executive order. Although probably largely because of the impact on her own business. But as it turns out, it's just, it's an interesting and revealing read. You should take a look at it, review it for yourself. There's no way we can get through all of it here. And at least let it serve as a grain of salt alongside any reports that may continue about Jared Kushner being able to moderate the worst impulses of the Trump presidency. It may not end up being true. All right. Last thing I'll mention here as my alarm goes off and tells me it's time to hand things over pretty soon to the guys on the after show. One more thing I want to throw in there. Interesting. USA Today reported a couple of days ago the White House has been posting incorrect versions of Trump's executive orders on its website. It turns out that there have been several discrepancies, some minor, some more major, in the wording of the executive orders being revealed to the public versus what's actually being signed. Tremendous legal problem, potentially, since it is their public promulgation that gives them their power. It would be remarkably difficult to figure out what to do in dealing with some of these things, and I fear that it might even be a conscious decision to do that, to create, what if it is all about creating yet more chaos? You got courts ruling against executive orders, holding them unenforceable, unconstitutional, etc., and only to what? Maybe at some point have the White House say, well, aha, you ruled on the wrong thing. This is what it actually says. Of course, the courts can say the publicly available one is the one we ruled on and the one that matters. But amazing that this gets added to the pile of insults to our political norms, and it's not even the craziest thing that happens on any given day or even in any given hour. Speaking of crazy things that happen in any given hour, what about the crazy things that are going to happen in the next hour on the Friday episode of the After Show? Let me tell you what I can about that. Assuring the city's residents you are welcome here, the Chicago Transit Authority uses social media to deny rumors of immigration checkpoints. And you kind of fear that everywhere you go now. Immigration and customs enforcement officials are caught altering documents to detain DACA recipients protected from deportation. That is horrible. And the Supreme Court probably won't care, but a new study confirms voter ID laws are not just racist, they are very racist. What about the last half? Well, I'll tell you a little bit about what you can expect after this important message.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Here we go with their new White House press passes. Gateway pundit troll Jim Hoft and his new White House correspondent spent their first day flashing white nationalist gang signs from the White House press briefing room. And scandal-ridden Deutsche Bank examined Donald Trump's accounts for questionable recent loans for any recent Russian financial guarantees. Guess what? They're not sharing what they found.